Hello everyone, this is Aparna Shetty from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering, AG Institute of Engineering and Technology. Today's video lecture, let us continue with association analysis, that is module 3 of data mining and data warehousing. In today's lecture, we will be covering the topics computational complexity of a priori algorithm, rule generation, maximal frequent item set, closed item set, alternative methods for generating frequent item set, and FP growth algorithms. So these are the topics that we will be covering today. So let us begin. First topic, computational complexity of a priori algorithm. First complexity is choice of minimum support threshold. So lowering the support threshold results in more frequent item sets. That is, if you have very low value for the support threshold, then you will have more number of frequent item sets, which in turn may increase the number of candidates and maximum size of the frequent item sets. Okay, so we should have optimal value for the support threshold, not very low value, because if we have low value for the support threshold, then there will be large number of candidates and maximum size of frequent item sets will be generated. Second complexity is dimensionality, that is number of items of the data set. So, if there are more number of items in the data set, then more space is needed to store support count of each item. If number of frequent items also increase, both computation and input-output cost may also increase. So, second complexity of this algorithm is based on the size of the data set or based on the number of items in the data set. So if there is more number of items in the data set, it increases both the computation complexity and the input output cost. Let us go for the next complexity, size of the database. Since a priori makes multiple passes, runtime of algorithm may increase with the number of transactions. So, if the size of the database is large, okay, so when the size of the database will be large, when the number of transactions is larger, the size of the database will also be larger. And since a priori algorithm will make multiple scans over the database again and again, okay, and if the size of the database is large, it will in turn increase the runtime of the algorithm. Next, average transaction width. The transaction width increases with the denser data sets. This may increase maximum length of frequent item sets and traversals of hash tree. Now, transaction width is nothing but the width of the transaction table or the width of the database. So, if the transaction width is large, then that means that the item sets are denser. That is, more number of items are there in the item set. So, this may increase the maximum length of frequent item sets and the traversals of the hash tree. So, these are the computational complexities of a priori algorithm. Choice of minimum support threshold. Next complexity is the dimensionality of the data set. Next one is size of the database. After that, the last one is average transaction width. So, these are the complexities. Now, let us go for the next slide. Rule generation. So, given a frequent item set L find all non-empty subsets F such that F implies L minus F satisfies the minimum confidence. So there is a frequent item set L. We have to find all the non-empty subsets of L. Remember, non-empty subsets only. Okay, then we have to form the rules such that F implies L minus F. Here L minus F means all the items in L minus the items of F, such that this rule should satisfy the minimum confidence. So this is how we will be generating the rules from frequent item set L. Okay. Now let us see this example here. If we have a frequent item set A, B, C, D, these are the possible candidate rules that are generated. ABC implies D, ABD implies C, ACD implies B, BCD implies A implies BCD, B implies ACD, C implies ABD, D implies ABC, AB implies CD, AC implies BD, AD implies BC, BC implies AD, BD implies AC, and CD implies AB. So these are all the non-empty subsets. Okay, from all the non-empty subsets, these are the possible rules that are generated. Now suppose there are here 4 items in this item set. So if there are 4 items in the item set, then how many subsets can be generated from 4 items? Okay, let us see that here now. So here the items is 4. So there are 4 items in the frequent item set. So how many possible subsets can be generated from 4 items? That is 2 to the power of 4 subsets can be generated, right? Okay, now among all the possible subsets, okay, now we should avoid rules such as ABCD implies 5 and 5 implies ABCD. So these kind of rules should be avoided. Okay, that is the rules including null set or an empty set. So among 2 to the power of 4 subsets, okay, these two rules are removed. Okay, so minus 2. Okay, so 2 to the power of 4 minus 2, these are the total number of rules that can be generated from a frequent 4 item set. Okay, so in general, if the number of frequent item set is equal to k, then there are 2 power k minus 2 candidate association rules, ignoring L implies 5 and 5 implies L. So for k frequent item set, 2 to the power of k minus 2 candidate association rules will be generated. Okay. Now, among all these candidate rules that are generated, we have to calculate the confidence of each of these rules. Okay, each of these rules we need to calculate the confidence. If any of these rules is not satisfying the minimum confidence, then we have to prune or delete those rules. Okay, so next let us see here confidence based pruning. Okay, how it works. to remove the rules that does not satisfy the minimum confidence. An association rule can be extracted by partitioning the item set Y into two non-empty subsets X and Y minus X, such that X implies Y minus X satisfies the confidence threshold. Okay, so you have to divide the item set Y into two non-empty subsets and form the rule such as X implies Y, such that the rule should satisfy the minimum confidence. Hence the theorem over here, okay, let Y be an item set and X is a subset of Y. If the rule X implies Y minus X does not satisfy the confidence threshold, then any rule X dash implies Y minus X dash, where X dash is a subset of X, must not satisfy the confidence threshold as well. So based on this theorem, that is the confidence based pruning theorem, okay, we will prune the rules that will not satisfy the minimum confidence threshold. So in this theorem they are telling that if a rule X implies Y minus X does not satisfy the confidence threshold, then any subsets of this rule will not satisfy the minimum confidence threshold as well. Okay, now suppose ABCD is a frequent 4-item set. Here confidence of ABC implies D is greater than or equal to the confidence of AB implies CD, which is greater than or equal to the confidence of A implies BCD. Now let us consider this rule. Okay, how to calculate the confidence of this particular rule? We have already seen how to calculate the confidence of the rule. Now let me discuss it again here. I will show you how to calculate the confidence of this particular rule. So confidence of the, suppose we have this rule here, A, B, C, ABC implies D. Okay, this is the rule. How to calculate the confidence? Confidence of this rule is equal to support of all the items in this rule. Which are all the items in this rule? A, B, C, D. Okay, so support of all the items, that is support of the item set A, B, C, D divided by support of the antecedent of this rule. Now what is antecedent? The left hand of the implication operator is called as antecedent. Okay, so support of, which is the antecedent or which is the left hand, the item set ABC divided by support of A So this is how we will calculate the confidence of ABC implies D. Support of all the items ABCD divided by support of the item set on the left hand side of the implication rule, that is ABC. So here they are telling confidence of ABC implies D is always greater than or equal to the confidence of AB implies CD, which is greater than or equal to the confidence of A implies BCD. That is, AB is a subset of ABC. So confidence of ABC implies D will be greater than or equal to the confidence of its subset, that is confidence of AB implies CD. Similarly, since A is a subset of AB, the confidence of AB implies CD is always greater than or equal to the confidence of A implies BCD. Okay, so this is confidence based pruning. So among all the rules that are generated, we will prune the rules that does not satisfy the minimum confidence. Okay, so let us understand it better with the next slide. Rule generation in a priori algorithm. Here, now suppose this is a BCD implies A. Now suppose if this is a rule which does not satisfy the confidence threshold. Okay, so this rule is having low confidence. BCD implies A. Now, which are all the subsets of BCD? CD, BD, CD, BD, BC, D, C and B. Okay, these are all the subsets of BCD, correct? Since the rule BCD implies A does not satisfy the minimum confidence, then all its subset will also not satisfy the minimum confidence. Hence, we can prune all these particular rules. Okay. So, hence here we are using that monotone property also over here. If a rule is infrequent, then all its subset will also be infrequent. Okay, so this is how we will prune the low confidence rules. Next, maximal frequent item set. So these are some factors affecting the complexity of a priori algorithm. Maximal frequent item set and closed item set. So first one is maximal frequent item set. A frequent item set is maximal if none of its immediate supersets are frequent. So understand it again. An item set which is frequent is maximal frequent if none of its immediate superset are frequent. So let us see this example here. Here they are telling that AD, ACE and BCDE, these are the maximal frequent item sets. Now first let us see why AD is a maximal frequent item set. Here AD is a frequent item set. Okay, which are the immediate superset of AD? ABD, ACD, correct? These two are the immediate supersets of the frequent item set AD. Here the item set AD is frequent, but its immediate supersets are infrequent. Hence I can call that AD is a maximal frequent item set. Similarly, let us see ACE here. ACE is a frequent item set. Which are the immediate supersets of ACE? ABCE, right? Then ACDE. Yes? These two are the immediate supersets of the item set ACE. Here ACE is frequent, but its immediate supersets ABCE, ACDE is infrequent. Hence, I can call that ACE is a maximal frequent item set. Here, the last one, BCDE. BCDE is a frequent item set. Which is the immediate superset of BCDE? ABCDE, correct? This is the only immediate superset of the item set BCDE. BCDE is frequent, but its immediate superset is infrequent. Hence, I can call that BCDE is a maximal frequent item set. So, hence the definition here, a frequent item set is maximal if none of its immediate supersets are frequent. So, this was about maximal frequent item set. Next, let us see about closed item set. The definition: an item set X is closed if none of its immediate supersets have exactly the same support count as X. Okay, I'll tell it again. An item set X is closed if none of its immediate supersets have exactly the same support count as X. Now let us consider this example. Okay, this is the transaction table, and these are the two item set tables along with their support. Okay, now consider this item set AB with the support of 4. Okay, now which is the immediate superset of AB? ABC, ABD, correct? These two are the immediate superset of AB, item set AB. Now, item set AB is having a support count of 4. Its immediate superset, that is ABC, has an support count of 2. ABD has a support count of 3, which is not equal to the support count of AB. Okay, hence I can say that AB is a closed item set. Now let us consider the next item here, AC, item set AC. Okay, now item set AC has a support count of 2. Which are the immediate supersets of item set AC? One we have here ABC, one more we have here ACD. Now the support count of the item set AC is 2, which is same as the support count of its immediate superset, that is ABC, as well as ACD. AC and its supersets have the same support count. Hence, AC is not closed item set. Next, let us consider this BC here. What is the support count of the item set BC? 3 it is. Okay, which are the supersets of item set BC? One is this ABC, one more is BCD here. So these two are the immediate supersets of BC. BC is having support count of 3. What are the support counts of its immediate superset? ABC has support count 2, BCD has support count 2. So both these supersets having a support count of 2 here, which is not equal to the support count of BC. So BC has a support count which is not equal to the support count of BC is 3, okay, which is not equal to the support count of its immediate supersets. Hence I can tell that BC is a closed item set. Let us take one more example here, AD. Okay, what is the support count of AD? It is 3. Okay, which are the immediate supersets of AD? One we have ABD here and one more we have ACD here. So these two are the immediate supersets of AD. AD is having a support count of 3 here. Supersets of AD, that is ABD, and ABD has a support count of 3. ACD has a support count of 2. So one of its superset has the same support count as AD, that is ABD has a support count 3, which is equal to the support count of AD, that is 3. Hence I can tell that AD is not closed item set, since it has a support count which is equal to the support count of its immediate superset. So that is closed item set. An item set X is closed if none of its immediate supersets have exactly the same support count as X. Next, let us see the relationship between maximal frequent item set, closed frequent item set, and frequent item set. Okay, let us not consider this closed item set here. Let us just concentrate on these three item set. Here they are telling that the maximal frequent item set is a subset of closed frequent item set, which is a subset of frequent item set. Okay, so maximal frequent item set is a subset of closed frequent item set, which is a subset of frequent item set. So this is the relationship among maximal frequent item set, closed frequent item set, and frequent item set. Next, let us see the alternative methods for generating frequent item set. Now, these alternative methods are based on two things. Okay, first is traversal of the item set lattice. So, based on the traversal of item set lattice, we can have different techniques for generating the frequent item set. So here, traversal of item set lattice, okay, they have given this item set lattice here. Based on how we traverse this item lattice, okay, so based on the traversal, we have different methods. A search for frequent item set can be conceptually viewed as a traversal of the item set lattice. The search strategy employed by an algorithm dictates how the lattice structure is traversed during the frequent item set generation process. So, the search strategy used by the algorithm, okay, it is based on how this lattice structure is traversed during the frequent item set generation. So, based on how you are going to traverse this particular lattice during the frequent item set generation, you will have the search strategy for an algorithm. So, we will go through the different techniques based on the traversal of the item set lattice. The first technique is general to specific versus specific to general. In general to specific, the k-1 frequent item sets are merged to obtain the candidate k item sets. So this was the strategy which was used in a priori algorithm, where we will be merging frequent k-1 item set to generate candidate k item set. Okay, this is general to specific strategy. Here the darker nodes, they represent the infrequent items. The lighter nodes here represent the frequent item set. So this is the frequent item set border. Next strategy is specific to general. In specific to general, maximal frequent item sets, we will get closed frequent item set. From that we will generate the frequent item set. As we saw in the previous slide, that maximal frequent item set is a subset of closed frequent item set, which is the subset of frequent item set. So we will use that particular strategy here. From maximal frequent item set, first we will generate the closed frequent item set. From that we will generate the frequent item set. So over here again the number of frequent item set generated is many frequent item sets are generated using this specific to general strategy. So first we will generate the maximal frequent item set, then we will generate the closed frequent item set, and based on that we will generate the frequent item set. So this is the frequent item set border. So these are all the frequent item sets that are generated. The last approach is bidirectional approach. In this approach, we will combine both these general to specific and a specific to general to obtain the frequent item sets. So this was about general to specific versus specific to general. Next, equivalent classes. Okay, here partition the lattice into disjoint group of nodes or equivalent classes. A frequent item set generation algorithm searches for frequent item sets within a particular equivalent class first before moving to another equivalent class. So first you have to partition the lattice, okay, as they have shown here. In detail I'll explain how they are partitioning over here. Here can you see this lattice is being divided. These dotted lines show the division. Okay, so in that way you have to partition the lattice into disjoint group of nodes, okay, or equivalent classes. Next, you have to find the frequent item sets within a particular equivalent class. Okay, first you will find the frequent item sets in one equivalent class. Next you will find the frequent item set in another equivalent class, and so on. Okay, now how we will partition the lattice? This is the question over here. How we are going to partition the item set lattice? So let us look here. Here they are shown the prefix tree and suffix tree. That is, see the first tree over here. Okay, this is one particular equivalent class. Okay, this is so this is one particular equivalent class here. Okay, and this is one more equivalent class. Then we have this particular equivalent class, and finally this last one. Okay, so first in the prefix tree we will partition the equivalent classes based on the prefix. Here in this particular equivalent class, can you see that all the item sets, okay, all the item sets have the same prefix, correct? So in an equivalent class all the item set has the same prefix. See the second equivalent class here, all the item sets over here have the same prefix, right? And similarly the third equivalent class, all the item sets have the same prefix, that is C. So based on the common prefix we can partition the equivalent classes, or we can form the equivalent classes. This is one approach. One more approach is suffix tree. Okay, here see the equivalent classes that is formed. One is this. Okay, and the next one, third equivalent class, and finally you have the last one here with one element. Here can you see that all the items in the equivalent classes have the same suffix? That is, all the item sets over here, they end with the same item, that is D. So they have a common suffix. here in the next one, can you see that all the item set has the same suffix C? So this was the second equivalent class. And finally the third one, all the items has the same suffix B. And finally the last equivalent class here. So this is one more way in which you can form the equivalent classes, that is all the item sets with the same suffix will be in the same equivalent class. Okay, so these are the two approach. One more approach what you can use is like all the frequent one item set you can put it in the same equivalent class. Next equivalent class you can have all the two frequent items, and in the next equivalent class you can have all the three frequent items. In that way also you can form the equivalent classes. Okay, so this is about equivalent classes. So partitioning the lattice into disjoint group of nodes. Okay, and then finding the frequent item sets within a particular equivalent class first before moving to another equivalent class. So the ways of partitioning the item set lattice is based on the suffix tree, based on the prefix tree, based on the suffix tree, and one more way is based on frequent one item set, frequent two item set, frequent three item set. On that way also you can partition. So this was about equivalent classes. Next approach for traversal of the item set lattice is the breadth first search versus depth first search. Now we have already studied this breadth first search and depth first search algorithms, right? Now first, using this approach also we can traverse the item set lattice. In breadth first search, what we will do is, once we visit a particular node, then we will visit all its neighboring nodes, correct? Next we will go for the next neighboring nodes. Yeah, in this way we can traversal the item set lattice. In depth first search, what we will do is, we visit a node, visit its nearest neighbor first, okay, then visit its nearest neighbor, and so on. So in depth we will be going. Okay, so in BFS neighboring nodes are explored. Okay, in DFS depth wise we are exploring. Okay, so let me take one small example and explain that breadth first search and depth first search for traversing the item set lattice. Now suppose here, let me consider this graph here. I'll draw the graph. Suppose we have like this. Suppose here I have two nodes like this. Okay, elements are 5, 4 here. Here I can have two more elements. So the elements are 7 and 6. Okay. Now suppose if this is my graph, so breadth first search I will show you the traversal for BFS. Okay. In breadth first search, so suppose if I visit the node 1 first, okay, node 1 is visited, which are its neighbors? 2, 4, 5. So I'll visit all its neighboring nodes. So I will visit 2, 4, 5. Okay, I will visit all its neighboring nodes. Next, in this which was the first neighbor here? 2. Okay, next I will visit all the neighboring nodes of 2, that is 3, 6 and 4. Okay, so I will visit all the neighboring nodes of 2, that is 3, 6 and 4. This was the traversal of BFS. Next let us see the traversal of depth first search, that is DFS. So in DFS, suppose we start with the node 1. Okay, next we will go for its smallest nearest neighbor, that is 2 we will visit. Okay, here in depth we are going, we are not visiting all the neighbors in depth. Which is the nearest neighbor, smallest neighbor to 2, that is 3, so we will visit 3. So now we are in this node 3. Okay, so 3 has no nodes connected to 3, so you will go back to 2. Which is the next smallest node that is connected to 2, that is 6. So I will visit 6. So 6 has no nodes connected, so come back to 2. Again, which is the smallest node that is connected to 2 again over here? 7. So I will visit 7. Okay, next there are no other nodes that is connected to 2, so I will go back to 1. Which is the next smallest node that is connected to 1? 4. So I will visit 4. Okay, and come back to 1. Which is the next smallest node that is connected to 1? 5. So I will visit 5. So this is how I will traverse the tree in BFS and DFS method. So breadth first search and depth first search, these traversals can also be used to traverse the item set lattice. Next approach, alternative methods, are based on the representation of the transaction data set. Okay, so first all the techniques we have seen, here we have seen all the techniques based on the traversal of item set lattice. Okay, for generating frequent item sets based on the traversal of the item set lattice, we have seen the different techniques, right? General to specific versus specific to general, equivalent classes, breadth first versus depth first search traversals. Okay, next based on the representation of the database, okay, or the transaction data set. Now look at this. First we will see this table here. Okay, so in this table we have already seen this transaction table, correct? In a priori algorithm we have used this particular transaction table which contains the TID and the items. So transaction ID 1, these are the item sets that are purchased. So transaction ID 2, these are the item sets that are purchased, and so on. For transaction 3, these are the item set purchased. So this is how you can store the data in the transaction data set. That is called as horizontal data layout. Okay, this is called as horizontal data layout. One more approach for storing the data is vertical data layout. Okay, here if you see here, we have this items, correct? All the items we have as the columns over here. So A, B, C, D, E is the items. Okay, now I want you all to consider that first table that which we used in the example. Okay, so these are the items A, B, C, D, E, and here the entries are the transaction ID. Okay, the data that is stored in this table is the transaction ID. Here this table means that A, B and E are bought for transaction ID 1. Okay, transaction ID 1 belongs to A, B, E. So these are the items that are bought for transaction ID 1. Okay, similarly for second transaction B, C, D is bought. So B, C, D will have an entry 2, that is the transaction ID 2. In the third transaction, C and E are bought. So C and E, you will store the value 3. Okay, because they are bought in the third transaction. So transaction ID 3. Similarly, A, C, D are bought in the fourth transaction. So A, C and D. So you will have the entry 4 over here. Similarly, A, B, C, D are bought for the fifth transaction. So A, B, here we need to have one more entry here, 5. Okay, it's not there. You need to have one more entry, 5. So A, B, C, D are bought in the fifth transaction. A and E are bought in the sixth transaction. So they need to have an entry 6 here. A and B are bought in the seventh transaction. So it should be 7. A, B, C are bought in the eighth transaction. So A, B, C are bought in the eighth transaction. And finally in the ninth transaction, A, C, D are bought. A, C and D are bought in the ninth transaction. Similarly, B is bought in the 10th transaction. So this is another way in which you can store the data in the transaction data set. In this table, the columns are the items and the entries in the table are the transaction IDs. Okay, telling which transaction ID those particular items are purchased. So this is about the vertical data layout. So representation of transaction data set, 2 ways of representation: horizontal data layout and vertical data layout. Next, let us see what were some of the problems with a priori algorithm. Needs the generation of candidate item sets. These item sets may be larger in number if the item set in the database is huge. Okay, now we have seen that in a priori algorithm, for each pass of that algorithm, okay, we need to generate the candidate items. So for first we will generate the candidate 1 items. Based on that we will generate the frequent 1 items. Okay, next using the frequent 1 items we will generate the candidate 2 items. Okay, now next from candidate 2 items we will generate the frequent 2 items. From frequent 2 items we will generate candidate 3 items. From candidate 3 items we will generate candidate 4 items, and so on. So for each step we need to generate the candidate item set, and these item set may be larger in number if the item set in the database is huge. So this was one problem with a priori algorithm. Okay, it results in a large number of candidate item sets generated. One more problem with a priori algorithm is it requires multiple scans of the database to check the support of the item set generation, which results in high cost. Now in a priori algorithm we have seen that to find out if an item set is frequent, then we need to scan the transaction database, right? So for each item set, okay, we need to scan the transaction database to check if it is frequent item set or to check the support of the item set. Okay, that is, support means frequency of occurrence of that item set. So for each step we need to scan the database, and this scanning of the database will result in very high cost. Especially if the database is large, then the cost for scanning the database will be huge. Next, so to overcome these problems in a priori algorithm, we have come up with one more algorithm, that is FP tree representation. Okay, based on this FP tree representation we have this algorithm. So let us begin here. Let us first see what is this FP tree. Use a compressed representation of the database using an FP tree. So here the database is represented by means of an FP tree. Okay. It allows frequent item set discovery without candidate generation. So you can generate frequent item set without the need to generate candidate item sets. Directly we can generate the frequent item set. Next, once an FP tree has been constructed, it uses a recursive divide and conquer approach to mine the frequent item sets. So divide and conquer approach is used to mine the frequent item sets from the FP tree. 2 steps. Okay. First step is build a compact data structure called the FP tree. So construction of this FP tree requires 2 passes over the database or 2 scans over the database. Second step, extracts frequent item sets directly from the FP tree. Okay. Once the FP tree is constructed in the first step, next step directly we can extract the frequent item sets from the FP tree by traversing through the FP tree. Next, core data structure of the FP tree. Let us understand how this FP tree is stored, or the data structure of this FP tree. Here, nodes correspond to items and have a counter. Okay. So each node means it represents an item and there is a counter for each node. FP growth reads one transaction at a time and maps it to a path. Fixed order is used, so path can overlap when transactions share items. In this case, counters are incremented. So when the transactions overlap the paths, just we need to increment the counters. Pointers are maintained between nodes containing the same item, creating singly linked list. These pointers are represented by dotted lines. So you will understand it better with an example. Next slide I will explain the example. So you will have a clear picture about nodes, pointers, paths and everything. The more paths that overlap, the higher the compression. Okay. So if you have more number of overlapping paths, then the compression is high. Frequent item sets extracted from the FP tree. Okay, this was about the data structure used in the FP tree. So let us understand with this example here. Now suppose if this is the transaction data set, there are 10 transactions and there are 5 items in this transaction, right? Which are the 5 items? A, B, C, D and E. Okay, so let us see how to construct the FP tree for this particular transaction data set. Okay, so here first step, the data set is scanned once to determine the support count of each item. So you have to find the support count of each items. Infrequent items are discarded. Okay, while the frequent item sets are sorted in decreasing support count inside every transaction of the data set. For the data set shown in figure, A is the most frequent item set followed by B, C and D. Here they are telling first we need to scan this transaction data set. We need to scan this transaction data set. Okay. Next we have to calculate which are the 5 items in this data set. A, B, C, D and E. Correct? These are the 5 items in that particular transaction data set. Now what is the support count of A? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So support count of A is 8. Okay. Next, find the support count of B. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Support count of B is 6. Find the support count of the next item, C, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Support count of C is also 6. Okay. Next we'll find the support count of D. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So support count of D is 5. Next find the support count of E. 1, 2, 3. Okay, support count of E is 3. Okay, so that is the support count. Here we know that the most frequent item is A, followed by B, C, D and E. So the order is A, B, C, D and E. Okay, because A has we are arranging it in the order of its support count. A has a support count 8, B has 6, C has 6, D has 6 and E has 3. Not left out any item now over here. Okay. Now suppose if the minimum support count is 2. Okay. Here all the items have a support count greater than 2, right? All have the support count greater than 2. So all are frequent items. There is no infrequent items. Okay. Now in each entry of this transaction table, okay, in each entry we have to arrange the items in this order only. Now A and B should be arranged. A should be first, then B should come. Okay, because A has a support count greater than B. Here B should come first, then C and then D. Here also A should come, here B is not there, next C should come and next D should come and then next E should come. Here we don't have B and C, so A, D and E. So in each entry of this transaction table, okay, you have to arrange the items according to the decreasing order of their support count. Okay, so in this transaction data set already they have stored this item set, okay, according to the decreasing order of their support count only. So they have already done it. So this was the first step. First step was, for each item you will calculate the support count, and next, according to the decreasing order of the support count, you will arrange the items in each transaction. Okay, so this was the step 1. Next, let us go to step 2. Okay, I want everyone to take down that table. Okay, want everyone to write down that table so it becomes easy for you all. Okay, here the first transaction is AB, correct? Second one is BCD. So first transaction is AB. You have to draw a node. First node will be null. Okay, first node will be null. We have to draw two nodes, that is A and B. Okay, derive a path from null to A and from A to B. Okay, and next the frequency count of A is 1, since it has occurred only once till now, and B is 1. This is after reading TID 1. Okay, So the algorithm makes the second pass over the data set to construct the FP tree. After reading the first transaction A, B, the nodes labeled R as A and B are created. A path is then formed from null to A and A to B to encode the transaction. Every node along the path has a frequency 1. Okay, that was about this first transaction AB. I request everyone to write this table, okay, otherwise you will get confused. Next transaction is BCD. Okay, so after TID1, this was how the tree looked like. Next transaction is BCD. So now since this transaction BCD, okay, it starts from B, so we'll draw a node B, we will draw a node C, and we will draw a node D. Then we'll derive a path from null to B, null to C, and C to D. Okay, the frequency count of each of these items is 1. Okay, next we will draw a link from this B to this. Okay, this will how we will link the similar nodes. Okay, so that is what they are telling here. After reading the second transaction B, C, D, a new set of nodes is created for items B, C, and D. A path is then formed to represent the transaction by connecting the nodes null to B, B to C, C to D. Every node along this path also has a frequency count equal to 1. Although the first two transactions have an item in common which is B, their paths are disjoint because the transactions do not share a common prefix. Here, although the two transactions has same item B, we are drawing different path because both these item set, they do not begin with the common item. Here the prefix is A, but here the prefix is B. Hence we cannot overlap. Okay. This is how the tree looks like after the second transaction. Next, the third transaction is ACDE. Now you see here, this transaction begins with the item set A. Right? It begins with the item set A. Already I have one path with A. So now this ACDE, this A, okay, I will have the same node. I will draw one node C, D, and E. Next I will connect from null to A to C, C to D, and D to E. Okay, here we are overlapping these two transactions with the same prefix, that is A. Now the support count or the frequency of A is increased to 2. Okay, because one is for the transaction AB and one more, this A is used for the transaction ACDE. So its support count is increased to 2. Same way, CDE will have the support count 1 itself. Correct? So this is how the tree looks like after the third transaction. Okay. As a result, the path from the third transaction null to A to C, C to D, and D to E overlaps with the paths for the transaction null to A and A to B. Because of their overlapping path, the frequency count node A is incremented to 2. Here frequency count is same as support count. Okay, support count is nothing but the frequency of occurrence of an item set. So frequency count for node A is incremented to 2, while the frequency count for the newly created nodes C, D, and E are equal to 1 itself. So this is how the tree looks like for TID3. Okay, same way we can continue for the other TIDs. So here see, the fourth TID was ADE, right? ADE, and after that you have ABC. I will just show this ADE and ABC. So after for ADE, now since ADE over here again we have ADE and we have the next transaction ABC, right? This was the fourth and the fifth TID, ADE and ABC. So for ADE, since it also begins with A, we can have a path that is from null. We can have the same common prefix here, that is A. Next create two nodes D and E. Okay. Since this diagram actually they are showing after the overall transaction. Okay. So here in the previous slide the support count of A was 2. Now because you are adding one more transaction to A, its support count will get incremented. Its support count will get incremented to 3, and D and E will have the support count of 1, and you will have this path. Okay. Next transaction ABC, again ABC, A begins with the same item set. So you will overlap A, okay, and B and C already you have over here. Okay, so this transaction I can overlap with the nodes A, B, C, and I just need to increment the support count over here. Okay, so this was after all the transaction how the tree looks like. Okay, that is after TID 10 the tree looks like this. Okay, can you see the dotted lines here? So all the same nodes we are connecting them by the dotted nodes or the links. Okay, this was about the first example. So this is how we will construct the FP tree.